Carl and Liam here from Games, Brains and Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial for short. And this We're Afraid of the Dark Hour. Are you afraid of the dark? Talk through slash review. We are up to the end episode of season 3. It is episode 13, The Tale of the Dangerous Soup. And if that isn't a title to make you just groan inside, I don't know what is, because that sucks as a freaking title.
I'm glad I'm not alone in thinking that.
Indeed. Although writer-wise we have Chloe Brown, so that's a good sign, and director-wise we have DJ McKell, which is a good sign. You normally get good stuff from both of them.
Hmm.
Okay. Cast. We have Aaron Taggart as Dr. Vink, and there's the ultimate reason to be positive, folks. It's Dr. Vink with a ver, so that's a plus. Then, incredibly, we have Nev Campbell as Nunny Walker. Yes, that Nev Campbell. You know, the one who would become pretty famous for playing Sidney Prescott in Scream, amongst other films. But let's be honest, that's the role she'll be forever remembered for, I think. Unless you've got another one. Do you have another one for Nev Campbell?
Honestly, can't think of many other roles that she did other than Scream. But it
There's
always
a
does amuse me. What's that?
there's a mid-90s, late 90s one of her. I picture her in a pool. Wild Things or Wild Creatures or something like that. I think I saw that when I
Hmm.
was younger. That she's pretty famous for that, but it is Scream, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I find it always amuses me when we see somebody pop up in one of these shows, that turns out to be someone that went on to be a fairly, big star in the future. So, and see that like they had their sort of humble beginnings doing this. And I think it'd be always kind of interesting to like meet some of these actors and be like, you'd go up to her and you should expect you to be like, oh, scream this and scream that. You'd be like, no, I remember you in that episode, that one episode in Are You Afraid of the Dark, Dangerous Soup episode, and she'd be like, whoa, man, that would blow her out, I reckon. Yeah.
More like it, she'd be like, wait, what? What?
Like, did I do that? Yeah.
Yeah. Greg Habenry as Reed Hansen. Apparently, he grew up to be a very successful artist.
Oh, nice.
Tracy Davis as Jersey, Martin Waitsit as Paul, and Eric Johnson as Sly. So, a couple of interesting facts about this. This is the only story in the show that focuses on protagonists that are officially over the age of 16. These
Mm.
characters are 18 or 19, apparently. So, actually, adults.
Oh, right. Yeah, I mean, you can definitely tell in a way. Yeah, for sure.
According to DJ McHale, the gargoyle used in the episode was just a lawn ornament. He actually kept it, but it would end up get stolen from his front lawn.
Wow.
He was nominated for a Gemini Award for Best Direction in a Dramatic or Comedy Series for this specific episode, which I find baffling considering some of the actual not better, but different, more dramatic slash comedic content elsewhere.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Yeah, for sure.
According to DJ, the soup in this episode was actually pea soup, which is rare. They actually did use soup.
Hmm.
Um, DJ says that he thinks the effect of the gargoyle flying is so bad that he still hears about it now.
Yeah, it's quite a quick little thing, but not great.
Oh, it stands out. We'll get to that. And finally, in an error or more retcon than anything else, Kiki states that her greatest fear is dogs. However, if you go back to the very first season, there's an episode called The Tale of the Hungry Hounds, where Kirsten brings her dog,
Hmm.
Elvis, to the camp, and Kiki doesn't react in the slightest. Which, if someone was that scared of dogs that her greatest fear was dogs, you would, of course, perhaps not be that comfortable with a dog being there. I don't think that's an error. I think it's more of a retcon, and it's really just for the nerdy side of the fandom.
Definitely very nerdy.
This is a frank story, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody else in between. But as we haven't done it in a while, and it is the end of season 3, it's time to do our storytelling ranking. Yes, here we go.
Hmm.
So, in last place, having long been eliminated and never to tell a story again, it's Eric with just 2 stories: The Tale of Jake and the Leprechaun and The Tale of the Dark Music, both from season 1. Joint last, it's Sam with 2, who currently is told The Tale of Watcher's Woods in season 3 and The Tale of the Dream Gone in season 3. Give her a break. She's new.
Hmm.
And she still managed to do 2 stories in this season.
Hmm.
Speaking of the other newbie, it's Tucker with 3 stories: The Tale of the Midnight Ride, The Tale of the Phone Police, and The Tale of the Guardian's Curse, all from season 3. Mixed bag for Tucker, man.
Hmm. Not the best.
And then we have Frank with 4, including this one here, The Tale of the Dangerous Soup from season 3. He's got The Tale of the Phantom Cab from season 1, The Tale of the Midnight Madness from season 2, and The Tale of the Full Moon from season 2. Not many from Frank, but high quality overall from him.
That's just not really fair because he has Dr. Vink in most of them, and he's obviously going to make it like he puts it up like a few points just by being in it.
That is true. I guess he's Frank's character, right then?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the first ever episode. It's a Phantom Cab episode, and he's in it. So
There we
yeah,
go. Then, we have 4 characters with joint 5 stories each. So, starting with David, who isn't in the show anymore, with The Tale of the Lonely Ghost from season 1, The Tale of the Twisted Claw from season 1, The Tale of the Dark Dragon from season 2, The Tale of the Shiny Red Bicycle from season 2, and The Tale of the Hatching from season 2. Overall, a strong set of stories from David.
yeah. I'd say on the upper tier. Yeah.
Yeah. Kirsten, also no longer in the show. The Tale of the Hungry Hound, season 1. The Tale of the Prom Queen, season 1. The Tale of the Final Wish, season 2. The Tale of Locker 22, season 2. And The Tale of the Frozen Ghost, season 2. Very mixed for Kirsten. There's some
Mm,
good in there, but there's also some.
yeah, up and down.
Then we get to Gary, who's also got 5 himself. And although he's this high in the rankings, he should be bottom for the quality. It is both from season 1, The Tale of the Super Specs and The Tale of the Pinball Wizard. Then from season 2, The Tale of Magician's Assistant. And then from season 3, The Tale of the Carved Stone. And the last one we did, The Tale of the Crimson Clan. Now, it's almost forgivable to a degree because, of course, he often utilizes his character of Sardo. But Sardo is often the only positive in some pretty
Mm.
poor stories.
Yeah, that's kind of the contrast between him and Frank, is that even though Frank has a quality character, he uses him well, whereas
Mm,
Gary often doesn't.
agreed. And the other person with 5, it's Kiki. Tale of the
Mm.
Captured Souls from season 1. The Tale of the Dream Machine from season 2. The Tale of Old Man Cocheron from season 2. The Tale of Apartment 214 from season 3, which puts her in the upper tier just for that episode alone. And then The Tale of the Quicksilver from season 3. Mixed again from Kiki, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So who do you think would be at the top right now
Well, we're
if you
not
had to
done
choose?
because we're not
Oh,
done.
there's
There's one
more.
more character. And
Oh,
then
okay. So,
running away with it.
oh
Running
yes.
away with a fucking 8 stories overall. So 3 more than anybody else is Betty Ann.
Mm.
Okay. The Tale of Laughing in the Dark from season 1. The Tale of the Nightly Neighbours from season 1. The Tale of the Sorcerer's Apprentice from season 1. The Tale of the 13th Floor from season 2. The Tale of the Whispering Wall season 2. The Tale of the Doormaker season 3. The Tale of the Bookish Babysitter season 3. And The Tale of the Curious Camera season 3. Now, I would
Mm.
almost give it to Betty Ann, except her season 3 stories have been really below par. Season 2 and 1, she's kind of nailing it for variety, but Dollmaker was all right. Bookish Babysitter was not very good. And Curious Camera, we obviously talked about quite recently, was really poor. That knocks her down, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, when you were going through the episodes there, I was like, oh wow, like what a great run. And then you went on to this season and it's really like dropped off.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's quite interesting because obviously this is a Frank story, and based on the episode you mentioned that he did previously, I think including this episode, it might for me put Frank at the top.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if we are doing it that way, when we eventually get to that, actually at the very end of this entire run of shows, I think Frank's in a great shout. There'll be some interesting ones because some characters have good or solid episodes and then one brilliant one. Like David is a good
Mm.
example of that with the shiny red bicycle. But consistency and just quality over quantity, that is the difference. Frank has got 4, Betty Ann has 8. Half what she's got. And his 4 are better than her 8 overall.
Yeah, well, Frank has an ace in the hole with having Dr. Bink in his episodes,
Yeah.
so I think that's a probably an unfair advantage, but there you go.
I go back to it. If he wrote the character, good on him.
Indeed.
All right, let's get into this episode. The group are all standing around a campfire and talking about what they're really afraid of. Now, this is a really interestingly done scene because how it's shot and how it's filmed, there's almost an air of fright to this where they're all allowing themselves to be vulnerable. Gary says he's afraid of heights. They make him feel sick. Kiki says she's afraid of dogs because she was bitten when she was a kid. And now when she sees one, she crosses the street. Hence the big error with that one. Sam says that she's afraid of birds, worried about flying her face. That's an interesting one. But Yan claims that she's afraid of the attic and she won't go up there alone. Okay. And Tucker says that he's afraid of slasher movies. which annoys Gary because Gary's like, oh, you can't be afraid of that, judgmental Gary. But Tucker claims he isn't afraid of anything. But Frank scoffs at him and tells him that he'll see. Tucker calls Frank's bluff, asking what he's afraid of, and in an incredible scene of what I love with the development, he admits to something he was accused of in an earlier season. He was accused of being afraid of the dark, and he admits that he is actually afraid of the dark here. Great.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was quite interesting that they did like a throwback to Frank being afraid of the dark, but then they forgot about the whole thing you mentioned about Kiki being afraid of dogs. Yeah.
I know, like, on one hand, you do a really cool thing, and the other hand, you screw something up. Like, come on,
Yeah.
guys.
At the same time, yeah.
Yeah. So everyone has something that scares them, although it shouldn't. There is some dark place inside that makes your hands sweat and your mouth go dry. His story is about fear, the kind that is different for every person, the kind that every person has to stand up to or will eat you alive. Submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society, this is the tale of the dangerous soup. Dumb title aside, I thought even that his normal speech introduction was really strong because it is something I think a youngster watching this can relate to. Even as an adult, there will be something that makes you scared, even though your rational mind tells you it shouldn't.
Yeah. It's funny how we often just have like the same exact thought, because my first note on this episode is great build up there, Frank. Terrible title.
Yeah, it's just that. Right, okay. Paul, a young man, is in a dark room with large fans running on the walls. He calls out and a voice speaks across the speaker telling him to sit down, so Paul does. He then gets locked in this chair and the wall in front slides down to reveal a large stone wind gargoyle statue. Paul is scared, naturally, trying to get himself free as the voice repeats the words. It knows what scares you. The voice now starts to laugh as we see a snake beginning to crawl up Paul's lap. And then we cut to a fine dining establishment called a Wild Boar. Decent introduction. I quickly gathered this was going to be about fear and it feeding something or whatever. You know, it seems fairly obvious it's going in that direction, but still felt enough intrigue to want to watch on.
Yeah, I think it does a good job of quickly introducing obviously what the concept of the episode is, and get a good understanding of it straight away.
Agreed. And we meet a hostess named Nonnie Walker serving a couple as we see the patrons are all elderly and really into the soup, which looks like green pea soup. Another hostess named Jersey tries to offer a couple of specials, but they shut her down as they're only interested in the soup. And in the kitchen, Nonnie and Jersey remark about how ridiculous it is to spend $100 for a bowl of soup, because apparently it is worth it. Now, get to my mind going. Immediately I'm thinking Goosebumps, Are You Afraid of the Dark? A soup that all the old people like to eat. Figure it's some sort of like get out scenario where it makes them feel young or gives them youth or something like that. That's what I start to think. So I don't remember this episode.
Have you ever seen the Roald Dahl movie, The Witches?
Of course, yes.
Yeah, there's like a whole thing in that where they like have soup in that, and it kind of reminded me of that a little bit. If you've seen the movie, you'll understand the reference.
Yeah, I remember how it was shot, and it was always shot in a way to make it seem quite garish and gross, up close, like slurping around the mouth and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Sly, a dishwasher, bumps into Jersey, dropping kitchen knives on the floor. Jersey refuses to even touch them because she's afraid of knives. What? Okay, I understand you might be afraid of knives, but if you're not going to pick up a... How are you operating as a human being if you will not even touch a knife? How do you cut food? How do you do any... Like, that's such a weird one, right?
Mm. Yeah, that is a weird one. Don't know how to explain that.
Back in the dining room, the customers are loving the soup, and one couple asks for more, but they're told that it's only one bowl per customer. Then everyone cheers, claps, and applauds as the restaurant's cook comes out, and the chef turns out to be none other than Dr. Vink. And that's a, studio applause moment, canned in, way.
That's what we're all doing, I suppose, at the same time.
Oh, yes. And then we cut to a few days later and Nonnie is interviewing potential new employees. A young man named Reed Hanson comes in and applies for a job. Immediately, he's kind of got like a really shitty attitude, which made me laugh. I didn't really see that coming.
Yeah.
She explains that the restaurant is owned and run by Dr. Vink. And of course, this is the chance for them to hold Vink, not Fink, Vink, not Fink, that thing. Reed is not impressed, so Dr. Vink arrives and leads them to a kitchen, with Reed muttering that Dr. Vink seems like a nutbag. When they get to the kitchen, Dr. Vink passes Reed a ladle of a soup and only tells him it's the restaurant's top speciality, Le Portage Dangereux, better known as the Dangerous Soup. Okay, that makes your title a little forgivable now because at least it's referencing the actual item in it. And I could see a fancy restaurant calling a soup something like this. and calling it
Mm.
dangerous because it's so addictive.
Yeah, I agree. I did like that it ties action into the episode. Doesn't often really do that, but I would prefer that maybe they had used if he like Frank had used like the French name for his title, and maybe they didn't even tell you like the audience what it was called until like maybe you went and researched it yourself, and you're like, well, that's what it was called, kind of thing. But
Yeah,
whatever.
that's
What's
not.
more?
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Mm.
Reed tastes the soup and he likes it, wanting another taste, but Dr. Fink refuses, telling him that he only gets one taste to know how good it is. He then warns him that he tries to sneak another taste, he will regret it. Reed, though, is not intimidated by him, and that seems to actually please Dr. Fink, who hires him in the spot. Dr. Fink seems fascinated by Reed's kind of attitude. And of course, in a classic Dr. Fink moment that is cropped up in every single episode, he did, of course, hear the nutbag comment and momentarily says, and I am not a nutbag. That consistency again is a whole thing where I let my imagination run with Frank, like sitting at home writing this out with a pen and paper and thinking, okay, how do I work in my nutbag joke about Dr. Fink, you know?
Yeah, no, I thought it was cleverly placed, and like it's one of those jokes. It's like with Sardo and his, making sure you say his name correctly and accent on the dough thing is like because I've done it so many times now. Like they got to be quite clever about how they do it, and yeah, they're quite inventive, so I quite like it.
Agreed. Okay, then we get like a little bit of a montage where the character of Reed, who we've just been introduced, gets changed completely for reasons I do not understand. We went from here's a surly teenager with a bad attitude to now it turns out Reed is a loner with no family. And he actually ends up being a really good employee, but keeps everyone else at arm's length, not wanting to get close to anyone, which ends up annoying Nonny.
Mm.
And the restaurant was apparently a nice place to work, but every now and then an employee for no reason whatsoever would just quit. I This is all done by narration. I don't. I couldn't understand this. Wait, why did you create the Reed character as being a surly, rude almost teenager who looked like he was going to get his comeuppance to now I'm apparently supposed to be sympathetic to the fact that he might just be that way because he's a loner?
I think they're just trying to present him as like sort of a mystery, and like
Mm.
that's what Dr. Vink's sort of like, and he's like a tough nut to crack type character, and then like all these little like yeah cracks are starting to appear, kind of thing.
Agreed, and it's going to get weirder, or at least certainly more in depth. Too much so for a show like this. But alone in the kitchen one night, Reed decides to try some of the soup. Dr. Vink arrives and angrily accuses him of tasting more, but Nonny pops up and lies for Reed. Jersey now arrives and she's mad as Dr. Vink has changed her job to washing dishes. Rightfully, right? 100%. If you
Mm.
are working as a waiter and you then arrive at work one day and they go, yeah, you're no longer a waiter, you're actually washing dishes, you have every right to be pissed off. That's quite a significant shift in your job and likely to result in a pay cut in most circumstances, considering the difference in the level, right? But it's quite a significant job change.
Yeah, absolutely.
While this is going on, Reed starts to open up to Nonny that he's always had to do things by himself, so he just isn't used to people helping him and being so nice to him. And he thanks her for her help and apologizes for his behavior, which she accepts. Okay, that's fine. Meanwhile, Dr. Vick continues his talk with Jersey and explains that she has been switched to dishwashing because she's too loud to be around the guests. What?
Mm.
Uh, there is a funny scene where, like, I don't know, like to prove his point or she's mad enough, she starts banging pots and pans. And
Mm.
having had enough, Dr. Vick reveals to look, he wants her to work in the kitchen because he's chosen her to be his new prodigy. So his thing is, look, I want you out of the dining area. I want you in the kitchen. You're going to be my prodigy, but we got to start off small. All right, that's not the
Yeah.
worst idea.
Mm.
He will reveal the secret ingredient to her and leads her to the freezer, which doesn't look like a freezer at all. That made me laugh. It's like, here's the freezer. That's the freezer. Okay, mate. All right. She agrees to go inside, and inside we see it's the room from the start, the room with the spinning fans, basically the torture, what looks like a dungeon torture room.
Mm.
Now, had this not been Dr. Vink, I'd have made so many jokes about sex dungeons and like, criminal stuff and all that. But the Dr. Vink character is in such a way that I know it's weirder and wackier, that I don't need to be silly about it. I know he's going to be silly about it. Hearing the door slam shut, Nonny and Reed wonder what's going on and head to the kitchen. Inside the room, Dr. Vink gets Jersey to sit down in a chair, and like before, the wall slides down to reveal the gargoyle statue. I know what scares you, which happens to be sharp things. And we now see Jersey is under a swinging sharp pendulum screaming her head off. This gets the attention of Nonny and Reed while we see a green liquid is being gathered in a vial outside the door. So this is the imagery, the plot point that pushes the story on. I know fear is related, but I don't know the purpose. Now, by seeing this green liquid and seeing it's green, I can automatically go, ah, that's likely to be the secret ingredient of the soup that makes it addictive.
Yep, I thought it was quite interesting. Dr. Vink kind of went from being somewhat of I think calling him a lovable scamp, it's not too far of a reach, but kind of went from that to like Jigsaw here a little bit.
It is an interesting link, but the weird thing is, it's still all dressed up in these sort of fantastical, weird stuff he does because he always had those moments. Like, think of Midnight Madness, It's all laugh and fun and games, and I just want to show my movies. But then you have those moments where he gets all sinister and weird. The Phantom Cab had it as well. It's like it serves as a reminder that he's a villain. And I think we
Mm.
forget that sometimes, right? That he's a villain.
Yeah, you do forget that sometimes. He's supposed to be, unlike, Sardo, who's just kind of like a lovable idiot. Like, Vink is supposed to be the bad guy of the story. Yeah.
Great comparison. They're very different. Nonny and Reed demand that he open the door and he refuses at first until Josie's experience ends and she comes out dazed. She can't remember what happened but ends up quitting anyway. Knowing something happens, Nonny and Reed continue to confront Dr. Vink, who finds himself intrigued by Reed's lack of fear. Dr. Vink basically reveals everything now. He once met a tribe of savage warriors. These warriors never fought with weapons, or they had far more powerful one, a statue enchanted with a magical power that induced fear and fed off its enemies. The statue could reach into the mind and create the person's deepest fear, and then create an illusion, and obviously the more they believe in that illusion, the more real it is, and that would be enough. How does this relate to soup? The statue secretes fear as a green serum. The members of the tribe would drink the serum and gain the strength and powers of their enemies. In the soup, a person is tasting fear, a very powerful emotion. I like this explanation. I like the reason for it, but it is a little flimsy. Ignoring the tribe stuff, like how drinking the elixir would give them the strength and powers of their enemies. That's wait, how? How does that work if
Mm.
it's fear? Shouldn't that mean they would then taste and have the fear? But I like the idea of the fear being addictive. But I was hoping it would tie into this. I had this idea, which is basically the reason why the restaurant was filled with elderly people is because this late in their life, they perhaps the fear emotion gave them a thrill. It excited
Mm.
them. It reminded them what it was like to be young when they were afraid of things.
Yeah, I mean, I
And
think you can
that's
take
what,
that.
yeah.
You can take that from anywhere. I think it makes sense anyway. So
Mm.
that's a neat idea.
But instead, all we get is that people like that people are tasting for it, and that's about it. And I don't really get like the point. I don't get why.
Yeah, it just adds it's just like addictive because it's delicious. That's it.
Yeah.
Nothing more. Yeah.
Nonny is furious, realizes that her colleagues have had the ingredients scared right out of them, whereas Reed still doesn't believe it. Dr. Vic wonders what might scare Reed and suggests, why don't you try the room? Which Reed basically goes all Marty McFly here and ends up agreeing to do it because he's being called chicken. All
Mm.
right. And Back to the Future's entire plot hinges sometimes on Marty being called chicken. I can buy into Are You Afraid of the Dark doing it as well.
Very true.
Reed was an orphan, it turns out, who ended up being raised. Right, hold on, folks. Ready for this? Reed was an orphan. He ended up being raised by an uncle who was abusive, cruel, and strict. So, what happened to that? What happened to that uncle? Well, Reed's mind creates a coffin. And as he approaches it as a young boy, his late uncle is dead inside, and obviously he opens his eyes and grabs Reed by the shirt. Reed screams for help, a worried from Nonny opens the door against Dr. Vink's instructions. Okay, look, this is crazy. Like, this is a big fucking development, and
Mm.
I'm all in on it. But shit, man, you do not have the time in this
Yeah.
episode to do this. It's too big. It's too deep.
Yeah, it's quite complex for such a short runtime, definitely.
I admire the attempt though, like you're doing what's like a realistic appraisal of someone's fear, which is a person in their life who was supposed to be a trusted individual and they abuse that trust, and that's fear and how that's affected Reed to date. Like that's great. Like well done for tackling such a huge subject. But no, not this show, I'm
Yeah.
afraid.
Yeah, it's cramming a lot, isn't it?
And at the moment the door is open, the gargoyle flies out in what is simply the worst effect, not just in this show, but one of the worst effects I've ever seen in this, Goosebumps, any shit like this. It is, honestly, folks, it has to be seen to be believed. That's how bad it is. I have no idea what went wrong here. And if there was generally no money, it would have looked better to have had it on a stick and have it coming off the side of the screen than what is actually here. I exaggerate not.
Yeah, definitely had to be a time constraint issue, you imagine.
It can only have been time, right? Because money can't be an excuse because you could easily get around that. But time, I reckon it's that. It's like they had no time to go back and edit it, make it look better, redo it, whatever.
I'm not so sure because I imagine the actor that plays Dr. Fink maybe demands quite like high wages or something. So like possible, you never know. Maybe they just didn't have the money left. That's pay for him and Neve Campbell, I guess, was nobody at the time, but yeah.
Yeah. This shocks Dr. Vink and he can't believe Nani unleashed it. It is now free to prey upon innocent people at will, so Dr. Vink heads off to recapture it before it's too late. They missed a joke here. They generally missed a joke. When Dr. Vink leaves, I desperately wanted to see him pick up a big net. Just pick up like a big net, like a butterfly net, and go
Yeah,
off with that. Like that would have been fucking funny.
that's true. That'd have been good.
Nani and Reed are both terrified and have no idea what to do. Reed suggests they call for help, but Nani points out the obvious. No one will believe them. Love that. Do love it when the character's like, no, that's a terrible idea. No one will believe you. I'm like, oh, yeah, no shit.
Good.
After all, who would believe there's a magic demon on the loose? Except it didn't leave. It's here to feed on them, and Reed tries to get her to not think about what scares her. They run into the kitchen, and Nani gets blown into the containment room. Reed tries to keep her calm, but she's starting to freak out. It turns out that she's claustrophobic, a fear of small spaces of being trapped. And, of course, that means it becomes a trash compactor. The walls begin to close in on her, and Reed's words about facing her fear clearly fall on deaf ears as she begins to panic. I'm game for this. Like, you're claustrophobic. As far as your mind's aware, the walls are closing in. His words don't mean shit. Your eyes are seeing and feeling this. Yeah, I get it. It's a real issue.
Definitely. And I thought, she was really great in this scene, with her acting, and I guess it shows why she went on to be one of the most famous scream queens of all time.
Absolutely, no question. I must say as well, the way this story is developed from the sort of silliness of the early character being scared of knives to two people having legitimate fears based in reality, that's some really
Mhm.
strong storytelling twists, I think.
Yeah, because they often like in these shows will always touch on the fears of something, like supernatural or like unrealistic. But yeah, like in this, it's really focusing on like the scene at the beginning and the storyteller's focusing on like real fears that people have, and you're not overcomplicating it.
Yeah. It gets better here as well because basically his uncle is back. He now has to face his fear as well. He's not real and he's just an illusion, and that's what Reed tries to tell himself. But his uncle continues to advance on him. But Reed finds the strength to face his fear. I'm not going to let him haunt me anymore, and breaks the illusions. I thought again, like I said, in a longer episode with a bit more time and a bit of development, Reed facing his fears. I thought there could have been a really, really interesting way to do this, even in the show, which was him almost I forgive you. Like, I forgive you for what you did to me. And that's what breaks the illusion.
Yeah, that'd have been quite powerful, definitely. But I
Yeah.
thought this whole scene was done really well with like boatloads of tension and him seeing his uncle stepping out of the coffin. I thought that was really wonderfully like creepy touch. Like that's quite interesting imagery to use in these kind of shows for sure.
It is up there as one of the more adult orientated. And I guess that's why they didn't use kids for these scenes
Mm.
either.
Yeah, that might be why. Maybe, yeah.
Anyway, it vanishes and he and Nonny are safe now. Reed gets Nonny out and tells him that he broke the spell by facing his fear. I guess Dr. Vink won't be making any more of his dangerous soup. Except he will, as he has recaptured the gargoyle and it still knows what scares them. They look at in horror as the wall slides open again and the gargoyle comes back out. He tells them that he plans to stay in business for a really long time before laughing maniacally, which is a very classic Dr. Vink ending. But I didn't like this. It just made me go, wait, what? Like, wait, what? How does
Mhm.
that work? I thought, like, if he faced his fear, what's going to happen now? Like, is it going to go for something else? I didn't really get it. It felt very, we need an ending and we need one that has Dr. Fink having the last word as he often does.
Yeah, I think that's what it was because like it's interesting what often kind of critical of some of these episodes because they don't necessarily always have that little thing tacked on at the end that maybe Goosebumps would have where it would add like a little twist or something. And we kind of like would often mention we're missing that, but then there are times like this where it's just kind of tacked on. It doesn't really feel like it adds anything or like is necessary. And yeah, so it's a bit different in that situation.
I just would have. I think it could have been done in this way, which is, happiness. They leave the restaurant. Maybe they leave the restaurant with happy music, but then we see Dr. Vink watching from a window, and then we cut to some time later, and he's interviewing new stuff. He's interviewing new stuff, and you kind of slowly pan over towards I don't know, the gargoyle sitting on a shelf or something.
Yeah, I just
Maybe.
think like I'm not 100% sure, but I imagine Dr. Bing will be in a future episode, and he'll have moved on from this whole thing without really any explanation in any way, you know. So
Well, that's a classic, isn't it? The guy's is a man of many jobs.
yeah, and you don't really know like in these stories like what the timeline is of when he appears. So maybe like the Phantom Cab is like the end of his story where he ends up in that little cabin in the woods. Like who knows, man? You can theorize lots of things.
Yeah, but that also gets me that only works if you are theorizing that they're connected in any way. I think you're better
Mm.
off seeing it almost like that he's just a character and like and he's just implanted into a story to further Frank's aim.
Yeah, no, I like to imagine like a multiverse, if you will.
Yeah.
They're all connected, like Sardo and Bink are all in the same universe. They're just like in different places at different times. They haven't necessarily interacted, you know.
I have no idea what waits for us way down the line, particularly when we get to the revival stuff. But I do hope there's an episode that starts having some of the more famous characters almost interact with each other in some way.
What we really need is a Snyder cut of the Are You Afraid of the Dark cinematic universe, like his cut. That's what we need.
Oh God, we don't. But there we go. Anyway, so nothing scares Tucker, right? Well, Frank's got an idea. He's got a black box with a hole in it. Frank, that's weird. Um, and he
Yeah,
wants
put your hand
basically,
in.
yeah, put your hand in
What's
to
that hole
feel
at the bottom,
what's.
Frank?
But yeah, Tucker ends up chickening out, refusing to put his hand in. And Gary asks what's really in the box, and Frank tells him exactly what Tucker is afraid of. And he slowly opens the door to reveal nothing, which to be fair is a good joke, because Tucker was saying he's afraid of nothing, and there was nothing in it. Yeah,
Mm.
this I overall am positive about this episode. It's a few hit miss points here and there, but I really admire what they had tried to do. It's another great use of Dr. Vink, but it's also a strong use of two young characters, namely Greg Habenry and Nev Campbell, both doing a great job working opposite Dr. Vink, but also working with each other. The confusions to the characters I forgive because of how strong it gets by the end, and even although I've been critical of the attempt to tell a much deeper story about fear, because it's just not going to work in an episode this short. I admire, again, the attempt not just only to tell it, but to contain it and get it in and out without leaving any gaps quite quickly. So overall, I'm very positive about this. I think I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the scale on the upper tier. I thought on the whole it's a really well told short story that is filled with a lot of quality acting. You know, the fun eccentricity of Dr. Vink is always a plus, and the concept is nicely inventive as well. There's not really too much to dislike about it, really. When I think about it, when I try to think of negatives, I couldn't really think of anything I was like, oh, that was bad necessarily. So, yeah.
There you go. That's a nice way to wrap up season 3. That was episode 13. The Tale of the Dangerous Suit. Got any thoughts? You know what to do? Let us know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. It does help us out. You can find us at gbhbl.com and across all social media platforms. And if you really want to give us a bit of extra support, please consider buying us a cup of coffee over on our coffee page. Thank you.